KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger, a public affairs program featuring stories from all over the Central Valley with Sevag Tateosian, 90.7 KFSR.
Welcome to another edition of the Central Valley Ledger. We're recording out of the beautiful downtown Fresno studios of the Community Media Access Collaborative, Fresno and Clovis, here not too far from the newly opened Fulton Street. No longer the Fulton Mall, but Fulton Street. Come out and check out the latest we have in downtown Fresno. Our guest is one longtime Fresno Armenian American who's taught at Fresno State for a long time. You know, Barlow, Professor Barlow, you met me 20 years ago when I was a student at Fresno State. Welcome to the program, Professor.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. Your family's in education, right?
Well, I think I was born in Fresno, so I grew up in Fresno, so I'm pretty much familiar with the city and its environment. And I decided to teach in Armenian Studies more than 30 years ago, so I've been doing that for more than 30 years. And we have other family members that have been in teaching, so it's something that I think most of our family has been involved with.
So the interesting thing is you've taught people and you've taught their children at Fresno State through the Armenian Studies Program. Talk about that. You've taught generations over there.
Well, it's, you know, if you've been teaching over 30 years, you can imagine if somebody comes in at 18, then, you know, and 30 years later, they're going to have at least some kids. So yes, I've had several of those that their children have also taken the courses. It's great to see.
So Armenian Studies Program in Fresno, you've been here for a very, very long time. How did that work out? You got educated in UCLA, correct? Part of it?
Well, I went to Fresno State, and while I was at Fresno State, the Armenian Studies Program was already in existence. Professor Kyumjin was teaching courses, and I was also taking courses and became more involved in the program. And so I decided to continue at UCLA, where I went for 5 years for my graduate degree. And then in 1985, I was asked to come back and say, you know, there's a job here. Do you want to teach? And I said, sure. And I've been here ever since.
So one of the things that, I mean, I had a lot of great experiences at Fresno State, but through the Armenian Studies Program, I went to Armenia with the class that went in 2000 or 2001.
2001.
You take classes to Armenia. Talk about that.
Well, it's something that I've always thought was very important, that you can teach students in a classroom setting about a place or about something, but if they go and visit that place, it brings it all to life and it really kind of embeds it more and makes it something more vivid in their mind. So beginning actually in 1988, I've been taking groups of students to Armenia for anywhere from 2 to 3 weeks. And as you said, I took a large group in 2001. My most recent group was last summer, actually, in 2017, when we went for 2.5 weeks. I took a group, and we had a really great time. So it was my 9th group that I've taken overseas.
The trip to Armenia for students, Fresno Armenians who have never been to Armenia, when you take your students, it's emotional, right? I mean, you've seen the emotions. Tell us, is there a reason for that, or why do you think it's so powerful, that trip?
Well, I think we have actually different types of Armenians. So Armenians that have been born in America, Armenians coming from the Middle East, Armenians actually that have emigrated from Armenia but perhaps have never visited back again. As I mentioned earlier, when you've talked about a place all your life, you've heard about it maybe from your parents, maybe you've seen movies, you've seen things about it. It arises some interest for most people that, hey, I want to go see this place. Maybe, you know, I didn't really believe that there is a place. It's so far away. How can there be this place called Armenia? So it's actually the anticipation of visiting and then actually going and seeing this place, seeing Mount Ararat, seeing all the places that we've talked about, that they're real places, that there are real people living there. I think that contributes to the excitement and really the purpose of the trip.
Armenia is going through changes. Fresno Armenians have watched, not too far from here, there was a group that held We Support Armenia events. What happened in Armenia recently?
Well, I have to give you a little bit of the background again for the audience. So Armenia declared its independence in 1991. It became an independent republic. It was part of the Soviet Union before that. And so for the last 25 years plus, they've been trying to really, progress and achieve some sort of stable, democratic, and very prosperous country. There's been some setbacks, I would say, that there's been some problems within the government in how they were treating their own citizens. And just this year then, all of a sudden, it was kind of unexpected in many ways. A new person, a person that was not expected to really be involved so much, Nikol Pashinyan, was a member of the Armenian parliament. He led a popular movement, which means that people in the streets came out and just, tens of thousands of people really calling for a change in Armenia's government and in its future. And so what he was looking for was to change the old ways.
And then something else happened that the world was kind of in awe on, and no bullets flew, and there was a revolution, right?
Well, we can call it a revolution. What it was really a transfer of power, a peaceful transfer of power. It happened because primarily, I think for several reasons. One is that Armenia is a country in which 98% of the people are Armenian, so there is a certain social cohesiveness. So people don't really fight with each other, maybe as in some other countries. There's no history of that in Armenia as well. So his ideas were so appealing and so popular that it really wasn't going to be a possibility to try to stop it, which would have meant that there would have been bullets flying. So it was a peaceful revolution. Some people call it the Velvet Revolution. It really is the second most important part after Armenia became independent. It's the most important event that's happened in the last 25 years in Armenia.
You've been going to Armenia for a very long time. You mentioned late 80s is when you started taking groups to Armenia. Your last trip, have you seen changes?
Well, I see changes every year. I was just in Armenia in May of this year, and every year, if you want to look carefully, you see, of course, changes in the physical structure of the city. So there are different buildings, new buildings, old buildings being torn down, new things happening, restaurants, all of these kinds of things. That's on one level. The other level is, of course, the people, to see what's happening in the institutions, the universities, other places. And that, I've seen changes, of course, over the last 30 years.
Barlow, something in Armenia, Professor Barlow, and I apologize if I call you just Barlow throughout this interview, because I've known you for 20 years and I have a lot of respect for you.
Thank you.
You taught me in classes, and they were fun. They weren't like, the way you conducted your classes. You made us learn, but you made it fun. So if I'm comfortable and I call you Barlow,
That's
I
fine.
apologize.
Thank you.
I'll try to keep Professor in front of there. Tell us a little bit about you founded or you were involved in something called Merhuis, which people are going to see the pictures off and on during this interview. You don't talk about it much, but what is Merhuis and how someone from Fresno helped start it?
Well, the thing is, Sevag, that when anyone goes to Armenia, they always think about maybe how they can give back to Armenia. How can you, as an Armenian living in the diaspora, do something that helps the people in Armenia? And one of the big problems had been in Armenia that after the earthquake in 1988, and because of the transition from Soviet to the independent republic, there was a lot of poverty, or at least some poverty, and some children were being left out. That is, either they didn't have their parents, they're orphans, or they had parents who were very poor. So a friend of mine, Adrian Krikorian, she's a judge in Los Angeles, Dr. Varjan Altabarmakian here in Fresno, and a group of about 5 or 6 of us decided to band together to establish this program called Merhuis, which in Armenian means Our Hope. And what it is, it's actually a place where young girls between the ages of 8 and 15, and up to 18 actually, can be rescued, really rescued from this environment in which they are very much at risk, and brought into a place where they can spend their entire day, go to school, and then get special types of education in foreign language, how to just be a good citizen. And in that way, we're preparing these girls for their future.
So I've known you for 20 years, and I didn't realize till maybe last year that you were involved in this. So audience members that have a passion for something, how do you encourage them to do it? Because here this idea turned into this Merhuis facility where you're saving young girls.
Well, it did take quite a bit of planning before we actually opened the doors of this program. And it actually has been done quite a bit with the help of the Armenian Church. So the thing is, you really have to find your own way. What is it that you're good at? Maybe it's something in the medical field, maybe it's something in the education field. And there are so many programs already existing where you can just go to Armenia and help means just to participate in the growth of the country. You can do that. What we did was a little different. It's starting something really from scratch. Didn't really exist in Armenia. We had to get a building, we had to get a program. We had to bring in the girls, we had to hire a staff. It was a pretty complicated process, but I think it's been very successful, and it's been going for about 5 years now.
If the girls, and I say girls, they're young girls, weren't in Merhuis facility, are we talking like drug activity, or would there be a chance that they would completely ruin their life?
Absolutely. So, yeah. Of course, when you're impoverished, there are no opportunities. And so what are your opportunities? It would be either to be married maybe very young, it could be to get into drugs or to get into illegal activities, illicit activities, all kinds of problems that are common to every society. And especially in Armenia, it's sad to see as an Armenian, you don't want to see the young children in that situation. So very much these are people that are at risk, and our program really monitors and works with them. We have individual teachers that work with each student over a period of 6, 7, 8 years to really develop it as a family so that child, once they graduate, can take a place in society.
Where is it in Armenia?
Well, it's in a region near what's called Arapkir, but it's near the monument region, which is, there's a monument, the statue of Mother Armenia.
Okay.
So it's kind of in that area of Armenia. And so every time I take my students, we love to take the students over there to interact with the students at Merhuis.
And I'm laughing because I recognize a few students from
Right.
some of these pictures that our audience members are getting ready
Right.
to see. You know, they're line dancing,
Right.
and they're having a good time. Professor, how can audience members learn about Merhuis? Can they contribute still? Are you still looking
Yes,
for?
absolutely. It's an ongoing campaign to raise the funds to keep the home open. You can go online. It's Merhuis, MER-HOOYS, or just look up Our Hope. You'll find our website. You can learn all about the program, and then there are ways to donate online. And people can also contact me if they would like to, but it's really, I think, a very worthwhile program that enjoys the support. Really, anyone that goes and visits it and has an opportunity to visit comes home changed in the sense that they do also want to support the program.
Shifting gears and talking about Armenia, since this transition of power occurred, are you finding that more people, let's say from America or Fresno, are now wanting to do more things in Armenia? I ask the question because I know for years people in America and Fresno have built relationships with Armenia, but do you foresee, and maybe you know that it's happening now, that people are more interested?
Well, I think it's too early to say, and I think we're going to see in a few years whether that's really true. But I hope it's true, and I think it's true, because if the environment in Armenia has changed, it's also a sort of an environment that's changed the way people's outlooks are. So now there's hope in Armenia. I say that there was hope before, but today I think a wider segment of society has hope for the future. And that could mean really very positive changes in Armenia, including having less people leave Armenia and stay in Armenia. That is, young people can get an education and then find something to do and stay in Armenia and make the country prosper.
Professor, you've followed Armenia for a very long time, obviously as a professor since the late 80s. I get the sense that the past 5 years there's been a lot of attention from Hollywood, from people like the Kardashians. Anthony Bourdain was just there. Do you sense that now there's more of a flashlight or a spotlight on Armenia, or is it just, it's always happened and we haven't been
Well, it's an interesting point that you make, and certainly the people that you've mentioned, the Kardashians and Anthony Bourdain, I think Armenia has always been an important place because of its history, because of its role it's played in history. A culture that's over 3,000 years old is interesting to people, and then also because there are so many Armenians in America that everyone knows about Armenians, especially in California. Everyone knows about Armenians. So it becomes an interest to see what's happening in that country and highlighting some of the really great strides that have been made in Armenia.
So as you know, this interview is being broadcast at KFSR 90.7 FM, and not too far from the KFSR studios, there's a monument. We've talked about the monument before.
Right.
It's the Armenian Genocide Monument. How important was that monument to be in Fresno State?
Well, the Armenian Genocide Monument idea was conceived in about 2013, 2014, when a group of Armenians here and a group here in Fresno formed the Armenian Genocide Centennial Committee, representing all of the different organizations in Fresno. And one of the ideas was to really do something that would perpetuate, really in a permanent way, the memory of the Armenian genocide, to honor those who died, but also to educate and to inspire future generations. So the idea was to build this monument. The site was chosen at Fresno State, and thanks to Dr. Castro and many administrators at Fresno State, they agreed to that plan. Today it's the only Armenian genocide monument on a college campus anywhere in the United States. It has become a central focal point for students and faculty and staff and visitors from all over the world who come to that monument to learn about the Armenian genocide. So I think it's been extremely successful. I'm very proud to have been part of a group, the committee that helped to implement the construction of the monument.
You're at Fresno State, I would say daily, because I know when I was a student, you were there at all times working out of your office. Do you see people just wandering around the monument? I ask because when I was there the other day, there were people just kind of observing that had no idea about the genocide, and I kind of explained to them what it's about. But do you find that?
Absolutely. Every day that I walk by, there's always someone walking there. Sometimes I see that it's probably people that are from off campus, maybe because it's families. Other times I see students. Now Fresno State is taking actually groups of its students that it's orienting to Fresno State, taking them. It's just part of the landscape, and it's something that they talk about. So the student leaders talk about it. So as I said, the location, probably there's not a more ideal location for a genocide monument than at Fresno State. So I think it was really a good idea to put it there.
Here in the home of Saroyan, there's a genocide monument. 30 years ago, would you believe this would happen on campus?
Well, we've seen again the development of the genocide as an idea and how it's changed and how it's perceived both by Armenians but really by non-Armenians. And Fresno State now is completely on board with the idea. So again, it's something that's makes us very happy.
The administration, you thanked them earlier, but I don't think people understand how critical the support of Dr. Castro and the administration was, correct?
Well, the idea has to be, first of all, approved. You have to go through a planning committee, a planning process, and then we have to thank the donors because they made it possible through their generous donations to build this monument in a way that people today still admire it. It's been winning actually awards for its architectural design and something, again, that's making proud. You mentioned about Saroyan as well. And this summer, on August 31st, the William Saroyan House is going to be opened as a museum as well.
And talk about that a little bit. So people are going to actually go to this house, and obviously paintings of Saroyan may not be there, but it'll be kind of 3D, I heard.
Well, it's going to be a very high-tech museum. It's going to utilize hologram technology. It's going to utilize sensors, sound technology. Really, it's going to be I would call it a cutting edge of technology museum. And we're going to have a big event at Fresno State to mark that on August 31st. It will be the opening of the William Saroyan Museum. It's going to be one more place that, again, marks Fresno as really a place where Armenians are known and recognized.
Fresno has come a long way for like the Genocide Monument, the Saroyan House, but when did Armenians first come to Fresno?
Well, the first Armenians came in the 1880s. We know that the three Seropian brothers established themselves permanently in 1881, so that's generally considered to be the beginning of the Armenian community. And then from that point, hundreds and then thousands of Armenians moved to the San Joaquin Valley.
Professor, you have lectures at Fresno State for audience members who are interested in learning more about Armenian issues or culture or writing. Talk about your lecture series a little bit. You keep it kind of rotating, correct?
Well, we have an Armenian Studies Program lecture series, and that lecture series brings guests from all over the world in a variety of disciplines. So it's art, history, music, We sponsor, co-sponsor with the Keyboard Concert Series, very prominent musicians. We work with the Cineculture program on campus to bring movies. So we bring a variety of different things, different kinds of programs which really bring attention to the Armenians. And if anyone is interested in learning more about it, they can go to our Facebook page, which is simply Armenian Studies. So you can look us up, Armenian Studies Program at Fresno State, or go to our website, which is part of the Fresno State main website, but it's Armenian Studies. You just look up Armenian Studies Fresno State, you'll come to our website, and we have a list of all of our activities. So we already have plans beginning for fall. We're going to have a conference. We're going to have an outstanding jazz pianist. We're working with the Saroyan opening. So we have a lot of activities already in the works.
And when someone gets on the mailing list of Armenian Studies, they'll get those flyers in the mail, and they'll get something called Hai Sharjum. Talk about Hai Sharjum and how can people get on the mailing list?
Hai Sharjum is the periodical or journal or newspaper that's produced by the Armenian Students Organization students, along with myself as advisor. And the newspaper reflects the activities of the campus for Armenians, what's happening that Armenians are doing on campus, highlighting student activities, program activities. It comes out 4 times a year. It's free in the United States, so if you want to be put on our mailing list, you can just contact us by email. The information is on the program site, but it's also at the Hai Sharjum site. So HYESHARZHOOM.com is the newspaper website, and has all the back issues as well. So you can learn about the activities of our program.
Professor, you do a lot of stuff in the community. You do a lot of stuff at Fresno State. This may be a tough question, but in the 30 years doing this, when you've been successful, obviously, but you keep pushing and pushing and keep doing more creative things, when is enough for you? Are you going to keep going, pushing forward? And you've been successful. Typically, I ask guests, how do you know if you've been successful? But you've been doing this for 30 years, so you're successful. Why keep, maybe the better question is, why keep doing this?
Well, it's, I think, the good question. It's a great question. I like to do it because, number one, I like doing what I do, so that's number one. Number two is, I think I'm also doing it as part of my duties as a professor to incorporate and get the students involved, and then also to tie in the community as well. So there's no reason to stop. You just keep going as long as you can, and try to, always say, well, what can we do different? Maybe we can do something a little better. How can we bring more people in? What kind of interesting programs? Stay up with what's happening. So all of these things cross your mind as you're planning.
And it seems to me that things are getting more and more creative as the years go. The Genocide Monument, the Saroyan House, changes in Armenia where you're taking the group, the Merhuis, I don't want to call it an orphanage, but the Merhuis Center where young girls can go and get educated. You keep pushing the envelope, it sounds like, correct?
Well, it's something that, again, I like to do. I like to always keep active with different kinds of things, and whatever seems to me to be an interesting project, I like to be involved to the extent I can. I don't like to get involved in something and just be sort of an observer. I like to be a leader and in the process to put my input into it. And I think that's really how I choose, is to do things that I think make a difference. Whether sometimes it's a small difference, but it makes a difference somewhere.
Going back to Armenia, we're running out of time this week in the program. Why should Armenians and non-Armenians care about what goes on in Armenia? Because sometimes that question comes up. Armenia so far, it's a country with 3 million people. Why should we care?
Well, I think for Armenians it's very clear that we are invested in the success of the country called Armenia. Without a country called Armenia, I don't know what the future would be for Armenians, but I think it would be very bleak. So wherever Armenians are in the world, they want to support the people living in Armenia and the country of Armenia to see it become the best that it can be and to prosper. For all other people, I think they would be interested, because to lose any culture, it would be sad. And I think that it's a culture that has a lot to teach through its religious background, through Christianity, through the history, its contacts with all the other peoples in the world.
Someone going to Armenia for the first time, what could they expect?
They could expect to have a great time and really, explore. If you like to travel, It's a great place to travel. Language is not an obstacle. There's plenty of beautiful churches and museums and things to see and do, and the food is wonderful, and the people are very hospitable.
Talk about Merhuis, the Center for Young Girls.
Mm-hmm. So Merhuis, again, is been in activity. We've been open for 5 years. We currently have 18 girls that are participating in the program. I was just there again this summer, so if I know anybody that's coming to Armenia, I say you would like to visit. We arrange that visit so that people can see how these girls are really changing, making a change in their lives. You know, if we can just change one person's life, I think that's a success in life in general. And to be able to do that for a generation of young girls, I think is really very good.
So here in Fresno, California, in America, we have a professor and actually a group of people that were a part of creating something wonderful in this organization to help young girls really change their lives. Great feeling. You all are doing some great things.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
You know, Barlow, we're out of time this week on the
Thank you.
program. Can you give the telephone number to the Armenian Studies Program?
Our telephone number is 559-278-2669. It is summertime. You can call. If no one is in, just leave a message and we'll call back. But we're looking forward to our activities. Check our website, our Facebook page.
On that note, you have been watching and listening to the Central Valley Ledger. We're recording out of the beautiful downtown Fresno studios of the Community Media Access Collaborative, Fresno and Clovis. Our guest has been Professor Barlow Der Mugrdechian, coordinator of the Armenian Studies Program. Started teaching there in the late 80s, been there for 30 years. Thank you, Barlow, for coming.
Thank you, Sevag.
Thank you to our volunteer crew that make this production and every production possible. We couldn't do it without them in the studio making us look and sound good. Thank you to those listening to us on KFSR 90.7 FM out of Fresno State, and also to those watching on Comcast 93 and AT&T 99, the Community Media Access Collaborative channels. We hope you enjoyed the program this week. Tune in next week to a new edition.
KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger every Sunday morning at 11:30. For a complete program schedule, visit kfsr.org.